Rock isn't dead. It's in flux.
Hi, everyone. I'm Britt with Rock and Flux, and I am joined today by Travis of The True Faith. Travis, thank you for being on the show with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first things first, I ask everybody who comes on the show this. For people who maybe haven't listened to The True Faith, can you give just kind of a brief background on how you all formed as a band to where you are today?
Yeah, good question. I think it actually started off as like a COVID boredom project. I've been playing in bands ever since, geez, I was 14. So like going back into like the 90s. It had been like a long time since I played in a band. I just had other obligations. And so finally had the opportunity just with the lockdown and just having nothing else to do that I started doing it. I started doing it as a solo project, mostly because most of my instruments were locked up in like a practice space we didn't have access to. So doing it as a solo project using like the synths I had at home and everything. And so the first like True Faith demo is drastically different than what it is today. And so ended up asking a couple of my friends in Boston, where I was living at the time, if they wanted to play with me. One of them had never even played bass before, so he learned it just to be in the band. And so it's been this iteration of a core group of people, me, Quentin, Dylan, and Francisco, who I think you had on previously as a guest.
Yes.
And just with like various rotating drummers kind of coming through here and there. So yeah.
Nice. And so you were in medical school in Boston, right? Is that how you and Quentin were working together?
Yeah, and Dylan. So I actually
Dylan,
met
okay.
Dylan on our general surgery rotation, and it was kind of random. We all went to the same school, but I didn't really cross paths with Dylan because he was MD PhD, which is like a different track, and so we don't really interact too much. And we were actually in a Zoom meeting with everybody together for that rotation, and he brought up that he was like playing some music and like trying to like program stuff in Ableton. So I just hit him up and I was like, hey, do you do you want to do something? And it kind of worked out from there. Quentin and I were in the same class and kind of went through the whole medical school process together. So I knew from an early start that we had similar interests in music.
What do you do in medicine, if you don't mind me asking? Because you're the first doctor. Are you a doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's rare. So like what I mean, that's so interesting to me that you went to med school, you're I'm assuming a practicing physician. But you still have the passion to release music on the side.
I think it's the only thing that keeps me like going in medicine. Like it's medicine's like it's a tough profession because one, it's arduous. It takes forever to get to this point. And there's just nothing but like exams along the way, constant studying, everything like that you need like a creative outlet just to like break up the the mundaneness of medicine. And so it's really like if I hadn't have started something, I would have had to find a different creative outlet going through the process of medical school. So you kind of make time. It's hard to find it, but you make it.
Are you like a surgeon? Like what's type if you don't want to say, you don't have to.
No, totally fine. Dermatology.
Dermatology, okay. Because like, I've always seen too, like, that some surgeons, like, when they're doing things, like, they'll have music playing, and is, like, that for movies, or do you think that there's any truth to some people actually do that?
That's absolutely true. I mean, I do surgery as part of what I do. Exactly. Not like in an operating room, so people are awake. But if you're like, I had to spend a significant amount of time throughout my training in operating rooms, and it's absolutely true that music is like one of the most important aspects of the operation. And you'll be surprised at the musical choices that some people make. I was scrubbed into a case with a pediatric urologist, and we were listening to Carcass. Um, he was really like into death metal and stuff, which is kind of not super common in medicine. So Yeah, it kind of runs the gamut, but it's definitely a factor.
It's so interesting. That's why I think music is so cool because it has so many different uses. You know what I mean? Like it can help you focus, it can help you relax, it can just I don't know. I just think it's such an interesting thing.
Yeah, it gets really boring if you're trying to operate with nothing going on. You need like a distract as counterintuitive as it sounds, you need something in the background. Yeah, or else like you'll get distracted.
Yeah, it's true. I know that like that may not make sense to everybody, but I'm like that even in like my regular stuff that I do. Like I just need something in the background even if I'm not necessarily completely focusing on it. So, um another question that I did also have is your band name. Like number 1, how did you come up with the concept of like the true faith? And then also I did notice when I was like looking everything up with you guys that there's a band in the Philippines called True Faith. So like first things first, how did you think of that name? And then how has this other band's name affected you all?
Yeah, it's really funny. So, came up with it when I started the project, and at the very beginning, it was very much like kind of Darkwave EBM kind of sound. So I thought the name kinda sounded cool in that context. It came from a New Order song title, um, uh, and, like, all the good names are taken, so, like, at this point, when you start a band, you have to, like, steal another band's, like, song title or lyric just to come up with something, and so came up with that. Didn't do my, due diligence on checking the availability of the name, ended up finding out that there was, in fact, a very popular 90s band in the Philippines, and found that out once like I started getting stuff on Spotify. Uh, and then how it's impacted me. So Francisco actually thought it would be funny if we just threw the in front of the name. And I said, okay, great, let's do it. It just started off as a joke.
Well,
And
it is a solution. It's amazing like that one word can change it, but it does. So,
well, and the sad thing is, it's like I could go back and I could change everything on Spotify and other DSPs to reflect that, but then like you start from square one. Like I have not figured out a way to like retain all the stats that are associated with it with changing the name. And it's a pain. We sent in to our digital distributor like a single, and the cover artwork said "The True Faith" on it, and it got rejected because it didn't word for word match what the artist name on Spotify was. So it's still like it's like a pain to deal with still. But it all started off as kind of a joke with the True Faith. We also like in an odd way absorbed like all of the original band's like YouTube subscribers, and so like when we started started the band and started a YouTube channel, we ended up with like 5,000 subscribers. Uh, Much to their surprise, I'm sure, but other than that, it has not affected me in any other way.
okay. Well, that's good to know. And you're in Philly now, right? Isn't that you're from Pennsylvania originally as well?
No, so Quentin's from, like, Central PA. I'm from the West Coast, but, and we met in Boston, and so once we finished medical school, we all kinda went our separate ways. You don't actually get a lot of say in where you end up geographically after medical school, and so, Quentin actually ended up in, like, Central Pennsylvania, so he's relatively close, and Dylan's still in Boston, so we're, like, all kind of still clustered around the Mid Atlantic and Northeast, and so it makes it okay to still play some shows. But last year we didn't even play a single show because Quentin's schedule was just so busy with everything. So
Yeah, I mean, you guys work, so it's like it's you want I'm sure you wanna play live, but I would imagine it's hard to find time.
yeah, we basically have to plan. Yeah, we have to plan like a year in advance when we want to play and do everything like that.
That makes sense. Um, so let me ask you this. If for people who are listening to this and they've never listened to the True Faith, what if they said like, "Give me a song to start out listening to," which one do you think you would tell them?
That's a tough one because I think there's been definite like eras, for lack of a better term, of the band. I would say like for right now in the sound that we're currently working with, I'd say probably anything off the split that we did with Bleach Cross. So probably like the Means seems to be the more popular song. Basically, like we've gone through where we've done things that are more uh like pop oriented, more along the lines of like The Cure. Whereas like right now, I just honestly all I do is listen to like early U2. And so like
I
that's
mean, you have to specify that though, because that's a lot different than current U2.
yeah, well yeah, every time every press release where we send it in, it specifies U2, Nothing Past, like the Joshua Tree. Even then, like I mean, War is one of my favorite albums of all time, and I just love the sound. And I feel like the band is really underappreciated within the post-punk canon just because of how awful of a turn they took. Yeah, and so it's really some of the best like guitar-driven post-punk that just doesn't get its proper due. But
I Will Follow, I just listened to that song today. I love that song.
oh, and it's produced by Martin Hannett, so it's like it's got the credibility. It's the same producer of Joy Division, but I don't blame anybody. Everybody hates Bono, so like if you don't want to give him a listen and appreciate it, like I totally understand.
Well, and actually, that was something I wanted to ask you. Oh, so wait, actually, so are we going to choose The Means? Is that the song that you chose?
I would choose the means, and that's kind of more along the lines of the direction in which things are heading musically for the band.
Well, and that's what I was gonna actually ask you. I have 2 questions that kinda go together with that. Number 1 is, like, do you feel like you found your sound? And is this it?
It's the sound I like. Yeah, it's the sound that I resonate the most with now, but it's probably gonna change after a while because you can only write the same song so many times, and, the reality is, like, this type of music, there's not a ton of a room for deviation from the formula without it losing the essence of that genre. And so, for the time being, Francisco always like jokes around about how we're gonna like do the natural progression of Manchester post punk bands and become like a Madchester or like an acid house, like electronic based band. He's really pushing for it. So, maybe for the next
It
album.
would fall into the whole Darkwave thing kinda still.
I go back and forth about wanting to like keep things like electronic. Um, it's just hard to do what we want to do live and like try to balance all that. So I try to keep it practical.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I don't know if I'm hearing this and I'm crazy, but I feel like a lot of your songs are kind of like anthematic, if that makes any sense. Like, especially your choruses, you know?
That's just I feel like a lot of the music I grew up listening to, a lot of like oi, a lot of like old punk, has those really like anthemic choruses. Grew up listening to a lot of hardcore where, everybody there's a lot of gang vocals. Everybody's like it builds up to something. I feel like there's not a lot of that in a lot of the post punk that's going on today. So it's something that I enjoy kind of like working into that. Yeah, but I would agree.
So is it purposeful or does it just kind of like it's just what ends up happening?
A lot of the times when I write songs, it just whatever happens ends up happening. But I feel like that's just the natural progression a song should take. Like I write stuff just because I honestly, like, if nobody ever listened to anything like that we ever did, like, I mean, it kind of sucked, but like, I write music because I want to write something that I want to listen to. Like, if people are always like embarrassed if like their Spotify Wrapped shows that their own band is in their top 5 or whatever, but like, if you're not listening to your own music, then like, who are you making it for? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I write stuff because I that's what I want to listen to, and it just ends up working out in that way.
Do you feel like your songwriting approach has changed over the years, or do you feel like it's been pretty consistent?
I find it to be pretty consistent just because I don't really like think of myself as a super creative person. So like, I was actually like going through the other day because we're getting ready to play like a string of shows and getting parts together for Francisco to play. And so I was going through and counting the measures and everything of every song and like the structure. I'm like, man, these songs are formulaic. Like they follow the same structure. And that's like how I want it. I don't think I need to like do anything crazy or try to be creative for the sake of being creative. And I feel like some people do that and some people pull it off really well, and I'm not one of them. So I love the formula. I'm going to keep doing the formula until it no longer works.
Okay, that makes. I mean, I think that makes sense. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Um, the other question that I had for you is like the vocal style that you have. Because it reminds me a little bit of like Sisters of Mercy, but like maybe a little bit more. Trying to think of like the word, like a little more forceful, I guess. But is that just like how you've always sang, or like do you purposely feel like that fits your style of music better to vocalize it that way?
Um, so I think like my register is probably a lot lower than what I acknowledge. I always try to sing higher, um, maybe in notes I can't always hit or replicate on a consistent basis. If I were to like start like a Sisters of Mercy cover band, like I would nail the vocals.
Yeah, because you sound a lot like Andrew. Like I so
That's my register, like naturally, and um, but I find that like vocals that deep don't really work with the music I'm writing, and so like in terms of like vocalists that I find to kind of capture the style that I want to emulate the most. Bands like Low Life, Early U2, the Chameleons, the Sound, like those sorts of things. So I always like try to do something along that style. Early on, like I had no idea what the hell I was doing because the only time I ever sang in a band was like in a hardcore band when I was like 18, drastically different. And so trying to figure out what works for me and what doesn't work for me was a little bit of a challenge. So if I go back and listen to some like old recordings, I think actually the best example is we did a 7-inch. It was like the second thing we ever released. And the B side was a song called What Is Owed. And that was like very early on in like the infancy of like the band as a 3-piece. And we ended up re-recording it for the split with Bleach Cross. It's the last song on there. And if you just compare those two songs, nothing changed about it. It's the same exact song, same exact lyrics, but the delivery is completely different. And so if I hear something that's old like that now, I'm like, oh my God, like um damn. So it's been a work in progress trying to find what works best for me vocally, without also trying to like blow out my voice, which I have a tendency to do.
is that the hardest part of songwriting for you? Like what would you say the hardest part is?
Riffs, a good hook, like as like I mean, punk music as a whole is very. I mean, you can only write uh, the same song so many times. Like there's only so many chords to work with and so many progressions and keys. And so trying to find a way to deliver something that's already been done because it has, but with a different take on it or a different melody, is always the hardest part, I think. So that's there's times where like I get inspiration from a song and I like, and not even within the genre, like there's Like, I don't know, one of my favorite songs of all time is Better Off Alone by Alice DJ. I think it's like the most brilliant piece of music that's ever been written. And somebody might listen to that and like be like, what are you talking about? But like that melody is the most beautiful melody I've ever heard in my life. And so like I might take something like that bass line and blatantly just rip it off note for note, but then come up with a different melody. And that's in a way what some of the songwriting process is like for me, is find a progression that works, but then create something different with it. And there's a couple songs where that's been the case. And I can't even, like, if I listen to the song now, like that I wrote, I can't really tell even myself that that's where it came from. And so melody is really like the most important part of songwriting for me.
And so your most recent release was the split that you did with Bleached Cross. And I talked to Francisco about that, but I'd like your opinion on it. Like, how did you feel about? I know you also have a new split coming up as well. So, how did you feel about doing something like that? And kind of like from your perspective, does it take some pressure off the songwriting to release something with another band? Like, how did that kind of work out
I
for you?
think it adds more pressure, honestly, because like I mean, it's not a competition. We're all friends, but like you feel pressure to put out like your best material at that point. I think like the split record is a lost art. Like it was so commonplace when I was a teenager that bands would do split 7 inches. And I always wanted to like do a split 7 inch with a band, but the reality is like people don't buy 7 inches anymore. Really unfortunate. It's such a great format. And so we played around with the idea of doing something with Bleach Crossed, just because we wanted to. We really like them as a band and as people. And so the idea got thrown around that, well, why don't we just do it as a split 12 inch? We could each do 4 songs and that'd be good. And so it was really hard to think of like what songs we would do for it. Some of them ended up like we wrote specifically for that. Some of them we had laying around. And I think it challenges you to do better. So I don't know. I want to do more splits with bands because I think it's, as I said, it is like a lost art form and lost format.
It's a win-win too, though, because like if they you it's cross-pollination of audiences that may not be aware of, you know what I mean? Of like that Bleach Cross fans may not have been aware of you all and vice versa.
It's like while we're all like in the same genre, I think everything could be just classified as post punk. Like Bleach Cross has a drastically different sound than us, but it's like close enough that like it should appeal to both. Like both bands should appeal to the same audience.
Right. And then for the people who are fans of both, it's a win too because it's like, well, now I have something with both of them on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the hardest part is trying to figure out who's going to go on the A side and who's going to go on the B side. So I rather be on the B side. So that's where we ended up. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, but yeah,
But you have a split 7-inch coming up, right? With Demers.
correct. Yeah, Demers are great. They so the label that put out the Bleach Cross split with a la carte records was Protagonist Music, and Protagonist also around that same time put out an EP from that band Demers, and it kind of caught me off guard because I never heard of it. I try to stay up with like current music and everything like that because we do like a lot of A&R for a la carte records, and Francisco and I do like a music zine, and so we were constantly like listening to new things. So that came across my way, and I was really impressed with it. And more importantly, just because like I never heard of it. There's always like bands kind of come out of nowhere, and so I really liked it because it really spoke to like the sound of post punk that I do like, and it is that kind of like Adrian Borland kind of the Chameleon stuff like that that I thought emulated sound like it had like a vibe of like very early modern English. And so reached out to them, found out that they live like right next to us there in New Jersey, and then ended up playing a show with them. We did a free in-store at Limited One Records in Manhattan, which, if you're not familiar, is literally the size of a closet. It's hilarious to amazing record store, but it's comedically small. which makes doing an in-store there all that much more fun. So we're all cramped in there, did the in-store, and then we're like, why don't we just do like a split record? And we hit up Council Records, who um, was I can't even like explain like uh, Council Records and their impact. Like everybody talks about like Midwest emo stuff like that. Like Council Records was like when I was a kid, like that was the record label. They put out Current. I mean, it's ran by the guy from Current. They put out the Ottawa Jihad split. They put out like Ordination of Aaron, like all these like really impactful like emo and emo violence bands from back in the 90s. The label kind of went away after a while, and then I think similar to a lot of other people, I think it might have been like a COVID project that got restarted. But Council Records has since put out some really amazing records. Like one of my favorite records this year was the Schedule One LP that they put out, and so we hit them up, and they were down. I was really surprised, and even though I just talked about how dead the 7-inch format is, we purposefully are doing it as a split 7-inch because I refuse to like let that go away. Like I want to hold on to that. And so we're doing it as a split 7-inch, and people are just gonna have to deal with flipping over a record.
Got to deal with it. I like both of the songs that I listened to. I think they're both great. So I think people are really going to be excited for that. When do you have a release date for it yet?
January 31st. Yeah.
Okay, so we got a while.
We got a little bit. It's we're in a weird period with music in the calendar year. It's just like historically with the way music press is, this is like a dead zone of PR. There's been some bands that have actually released some incredible records within the last like week or two. And like the Justice Divine record that just came out is probably one of my favorite albums of the year. It's this French like post-punk oi band, and it's their debut record. It's members of Syndrome 81 who are also amazing. So that came out of nowhere. I think Gleamer just had a record that just came out. And so music press in the traditional sense is dead as far as I'm concerned. Like nobody's reading like Pitchfork, nobody's reading
It's
blogs,
also
and
like
so
it's just the pretension of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like Pitchfork was just so pretentious. And I think people are kind of over that. At least I hope they are, you know?
well, and it's weird too because there's a period of time like I would go back and read old episode or issues of Maximum Rock and Roll, and people gave honest reviews. Like if you sent them something, they'd probably review it. You might not like what they say, and Pitchfork was doing that for a while, but things have really shifted into the opposite, where like everything is a positive review all the time. And I don't think it's discerning enough for most people. There's also like, and this is like an issue that there's not a really good solution for, but like I respect the people who take their time and use writing of music as their creative outlet, and it's a thankless job because like unless you're getting like significant ad revenue or something from your website, you're not making anything off of it. But the problem is like bands can't afford to drop $5,000 on a PR campaign or do all these things. And a lot of websites now that are covering music, even in this genre, are pay to play. Like you have to pay money to get a feature, and that's absolutely ridiculous and really antithetical to the whole ethos of music journalism. So I think like a lot of the times everybody dumps all this effort into PR, but like who is it for? I don't think people are reading the stuff as much, but you as a band, you want to show that the press is covering it because it creates legitimacy of your product. That maybe like somebody's looking at your Instagram store and they're like, oh wow, Stereo Gum did a write-up of this band. It's got to be good, but like how much money did you spend just to get that Stereo Gum write-up? Like I don't know. So I don't know how much longer this is going to be going on, especially with the downfall of Pitchfork. So
I'm okay with the downfall of Pitchfork. I don't know. I think I am.
I'm with you.
But, you know, for me, like I if I don't like something, I just don't cover it on the show, or I just don't ask them to be on it. And I'll say my opinion on it. Like if it comes up, like I'll say my honest opinion of it. And I think everyone should be able to take criticism, especially if it's creative criticism. Um, but I also for me, like, I can play some instruments, but I would never call myself a musician, and so for me, it's like, who am I to judge something that somebody else put out into the world that they care about? You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll just say nothing, like, if they and now it's a different story, like, if you ask for it, you're welcoming that, and you gotta take good or bad because you're asking for it. But if someone isn't, then it's like, I'm just not gonna say anything, you know? So
It is interesting because like there is this anti gatekeeping movement that's going on. I feel like, and a lot of music journalism was kind of that. It was just gatekeeping, and so either you covered the bands that you liked, but more importantly, like people would just write scathing reviews of things, and I kind of miss it in a weird way, but I don't want somebody to do that for my music. So,
right.
so
Like, I
I
mean,
get
I'll
it.
tell you, I think I can't stand I don't mind Pearl Jam, and I can appreciate, like, their earlier stuff, but Eddie Vedder's voice is like nails on a chalkboard to me, and anyone who knows me knows I can't stand it. And it's just like, I will openly say that. I'm sure he's heard that plenty in his career. He's doing just fine, but, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have my opinions about bands too. I try to be cordial though, so I leave leave that out
Eddie
of.
Vedder's never gonna listen to this, so it doesn't.
You never know. I'll tag them.
Okay. I'll still tell him. Like, well, and, I can listen to 10. That album, no problem. But other times, I don't know, I can't do it. I just can't. Anyway, we've reached the game portion of the show. So I change it up every time. So today we're gonna do the best. So I'm gonna say something, and then you tell me, like, what the best of it is. So the first question is, the best show you've ever played?
Best show I've ever played. We played a show at Brighton Music Hall in Boston. It was actually, I think it was like a record release show for House of Harm. Um, I think that's by far the best show we played. One, because like it was just like the most legit venue. Like it's probably like a 500 person capacity venue with like pro sound, pro lights. Like anytime you go into a place and like there's somebody who's doing like an actual sound check for real, you're like, okay, we're in good shape. We're not used to that. Like we'll just show up and like not even line check. We'll just play. But so I think that was the best for. Yeah, I mean, it's what I'm used to. It's probably not the best. I probably should be more diligent about it. That's probably the best from like a sound perspective. My favorite show that we played, I think, would probably be we played at Gold Sounds in Brooklyn when we were on tour. That one is probably my favorite because we played with a lot of bands I really love, like Spirits of Leo and Plight. And we were on tour with Doused, who phenomenal like shoegaze band. So that was probably my favorite. It had a great turnout. The sound was good, but I still can't beat the sound at Brighton Music Hall. That was
The best guitar to play.
So I have gone through a couple iterations of guitars. Right now, my favorite is my Harmony Juno. Let me see if I can actually get this down real quick because this thing's ridiculous. This thing is like so like tiny. It's it's sorry, here we go. It is like comically small in a weird way, but it has like the best tone. Um I love this thing. I was like a Jazz Master loyalist for the longest time. And then I played this. I was like, man, Jazz Master sucks. So that's like by far like my favorite guitar to play right now.
The best vocalist.
Best vocalist. Um, if people are gonna hate me for the man, Bono. Like honestly, like not like he's not the best technical vocalist, but his delivery and and how it works with the music, like, and we're talking early stuff.
Like Gloria, that's a good vocal in that song.
Gloria, like when like two of my favorite U2 songs are like Rejoice and Like a Song. Like he nails the vocals so well. I like Adrian Borland a lot too of the sound. They both have a very similar quality to them. So I think that's my favorite. And then I mean, this is like why it's such a hard question. I mean, like Elizabeth Fraser of Cocteau Twins, like nobody can replicate that. I don't even think she can replicate it anymore. But like her vocal delivery, or it was Elisa Gerard of Dead Can Dance. I don't know. Like I could probably keep like coming up with some. But I no, I'll pick Bono.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. When do you think that you two like went too far? Because I know the album that like the last album I was okay with, but I wonder what your thought would be.
I think the last album that they did where they had that original like sound that they were doing was War, like hands down. The last album I'll probably listen to, like The Unforgettable Fire, maybe The Joshua Tree. That's where I draw the line. After that, the band's dead to me. They should just change the name. But War and
And you did say that earlier. Never mind. I
yeah,
remember
you
you
can't
said
you can't be you can't be War. Like the sad thing is like I know they're never gonna play the songs I ever want them to play when if
that
I
would
were
be
to see
so
them
silly
live.
not
So
to though. Like there's some great ones on that album. I don't know why they wouldn't play it. I won't go see them live if they wouldn't, because that would be all I would want to hear. Is like that older stuff.
no, they're gonna play like Zootopia or something. Whatever. I can't even name a new U2 song.
Oh god. Like wasn't it like oh, The Sweetest Thing or something like that? That was a bad one.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, that's where I like draw
That was
draw the
like it was
line.
still popular, but it was like this has gone downhill and this is horrible. And you're right, it really was even before that. The best band of all time.
Best band of all time. Iron Maiden, honestly. Which then I mean, Bruce Dickinson's vocal. He's like one of the best vocalists of all time. So like a hard question to answer. I think like just consistently the best band has to be Iron Maiden. Um, the Blaze Bailey like era with like X like or whatever the album was, the one off that they did was that we forget that one that doesn't exist to me. And then sadly, obviously, like Paul Di'Anno just passed, and I really love the first two Maiden albums as well. But like, um, I feel like I'm in a minority here, but like Seventh Son of the Seventh Son is hands down the best Iron Maiden album. So I love that era, but everything is so amazing. And there's no band that can like replicate that or do what they do on that scale.
Okay. That's a fair one. Your favorite coffee brand, if you drink coffee. If not, I'll think of
I'll
something
be
else.
real with you. I do not drink
You
coffee.
don't? Do you drink tea?
I don't drink tea. I drink energy drinks, and I could talk for hours about about energy drinks. I'm like an energy drink connoisseur. Well, okay, so like, let's see. This morning I drank an Alani New. This one's a good flavor. This one's good. I mean, so I have some criteria. One, it has to be at least 200 milligrams of caffeine, or else it's just not worth it. It has to be sugar free. I just I, I can't like even stomach the taste of like soda or anything with sugar in it. Like, um, yeah. So like, this is good. I think my favorite energy drink, probably the red Sour Patch Kid flavored Ghosts, are really good. I love that. Right now, like the new Monster that came out that's like a guava flavor is really good. I've been drinking that one a lot. And then Alani also has like a holiday flavor. I forget what it's called, but it's like this like coconut and cranberry kind of thing. It's delicious. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Maybe I'll try that. Your favorite place to buy clothing from?
Um,
And do you think a band's style matters?
I think it does. I think it does. And I say that as somebody who is not cool looking in a band. If you go back and look at photos of old bands, like any band off like the 4AD catalog in the 80s, like they just look objectively cool. Like band photos were cool. Um, Everybody had great style. And you look at any band photo today, and we're all looking like a bunch of nerds trying to look cool in a photo. Like the worst thing in the world is having to take band promo photos. And I'm at the age now where I just like I don't care. Like I have like a professional career. Like I'm not trying to like look all that cool. So my style doesn't really reflect that. I look very normal for being in like a punk band. And so To answer your question, I probably shop the most at J. Crew, which is like not the most goth thing that's out there, but like I don't own black clothing. Like I don't
Oh,
have
that's like
any.
all I wear.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me. So
That's
yeah,
okay
no
though.
black clothing for me.
I shop at J. Crew, here and there, but I do wear a lot of black. They have some black sweaters, so you know. Um, your favorite city to play in, which I think you kind of probably already answered this.
I think New York, just because like there's great bands there. There's it's just a bigger city, so I feel like there's just generally more people that come out. I say my least favorite city to play is Boston. Boston's in a weird position where like COVID wiped out a lot of like the venues that would normally house shows of this size, and it's gotten to be such an expensive city. Like to live in Boston is on par with living in New York, and because of that, like the artist community suffers, and so it's just there's just not a lot of bands to play with. There's I can count on like one hand the amount of bands that are in Boston that we like to play with, and then there's just not people really going out to the shows, and which is crazy. It's a huge college city. Like there should be more of a scene, but the scene's dead in Boston. Now, Candlepin Records, I got to shout out because like they're based in Boston and they're doing awesome things. Different vibe overall. They do like a lot of slowcore and a lot of shoegaze. So that scene I think is thriving. But for like the scene that we fit into, it's non-existent, honestly.
What about like a city like Philly? Because like, do you work at all with like Abandon Everything Records?
Yeah. Vince is actually, I think, on his way over to my house
Oh,
to,
cool. It was funny. You know what's so
to
funny?
drop off some records.
You and I, the first time we scheduled this, I was glad it was both of us at least. We both blanked on it and just didn't go. And then Vinny messaged me and he's like, "When are you talking to Travis?" I was like, "Shit, I totally blanked on that. We were already supposed to have talked." And that's what made me reach back out to you because he reminded me. And I was like, at least it wasn't just like me. Because I think you can attest to the fact like schedules get crazy, especially this time of year. So it's just like really hard to nail time down. So but that was funny because it was Vinny that reminded me.
That is hilarious. No, he's awesome. I met him when we first played through Philly. And then I moved here, and so he's great. He does all the vinyl pressing now for a la carte records. So he's actually gonna come over and drop off some records that he pressed for us. And um yeah, sorry, the question was Philly. Is that
Yeah, like, well, like, how do you think that scene is? Because I feel like Philly still has some decent venues that you all could play in, and some other bands that you would work with too. Like, you would probably, do a decent show together.
Philly has a super robust scene, and I think it spans a lot of different genres. I mean, it's almost like a joke at this point, like how many shoegaze bands there are in Philly. And I mean, it makes sense. Like nothing became such a large presence in that kind of scene that like it makes total sense that there's a lot of bands from here kind of doing that thing. And even from post punk, like I mean, Born Losers Records is like based out of here,
I
and so
went
a
to
lot of the
college
bands they're
with
putting
Chris,
out.
believe
Oh,
it or
really?
not.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah,
went to
I mean
Drexel.
oh, that's awesome. They put out a ton of good records. So like Corinne and like I'm trying to think of what other
Nysons is on theirs.
yeah, nice. And so there's like a decent scene for that in Philly, and it's not oversaturated in the sense that like those bands don't seem to play all that often. So when they do play, it's like a nice treat. And there's still great venues out here. Like it's not hard to get a show somewhere. And there's also like a really robust like underground like house show scene. So Philly's a great place to be if you're a musician. Unfortunately, like I don't want to play all that often to like
Well, it gets busy.
I
I
just
think also, like, as we get older, we don't really wanna go out. Like, that's the thing for me. Like, I love live music and stuff, but, like, just, like, motivating myself to leave the house in like, later in the day, I'm like, I don't really want to, you know? So
no, it's funny because I'm always like, oh, I should play more shows. And then leading up to playing a show, I'm like, man, why did I agree to do this? Like, why did I sign up for this? It's too late to back out. Like, I rather just, like, go home and hang out with my kid. Like,
Exactly, it's
um,
true.
and then I play it, and I was like, "Okay, it wasn't so bad." And then, like, we'll do, like, a random, like, run of shows. Like, we just did a run of shows where we played Philly, and we played in, like, Ohio. And then we played in New York, and I'm like, "Man, this sucks." And then afterwards, I was like, "All right, let's plan our West Coast tour." So I have, like, selective amnesia about, like, playing shows, but when I sit down and think about it, I was like, there's a million other things I'd kinda rather do, like,
Oh, that's right, you guys do have a West Coast tour, don't you?
yeah, we haven't technically announced it yet, but I've alluded to, going out to the West Coast in August, which would be good. Love the West Coast, and it'll be nice to see people out there.
I don't think you guys are gonna make it out to Phoenix, though. I think I saw that on social somewhere.
Yeah, the label that, put out the Bleach Cross Truth Faith split, I think, is based in either Phoenix or Tucson, but he's somewhere in Arizona. If it worked out, it would be okay, but we only were able to get, like, a week off of work and gotta, like, account for the drive back up to where we started and everything. So, maybe in the future,
Well, I'll be there if you all do.
but definitely in the winter. It will definitely be in the winter time if it happens.
Yeah, that's a good time to come here. You don't wanna come here in August, that's for sure, at all. Okay, so final question, and I ask everybody this who comes on the show as well. So obviously this show is called Rock and Flux because I don't believe that rock is dead. And I use the term rock, it really encompasses a lot of like post-punk and other genres of music. They all fall under that umbrella in my opinion. And I don't think it's dead. I think it's in flux. So what is your opinion on the phrase rock is dead?
I think objectively, it's just not true. I mean, as of, like, right now, I think there's more bands that have ever existed at any point in time, and it's just music is just so much more accessible to make now, and it's like a double-edged sword because on one hand, like, everybody should be able to make music and have their creative outlet. But at the same time, it gets hard to discern what you like when everything's oversaturated. And so, rock is very much like not dead right now. I think it's like in a huge boom, and accessibility, being able to like, you used to have to be paying thousands of dollars to go to a studio, record on tape. Like you had to have like the financial means and the connections to be able to do stuff. And now anybody can like go get like a Focusrite like interface and use GarageBand and make a great record. And I love that about it. But also like, man, there are a ton of bands and it's daunting. And as a band, it's like kind of hard to navigate that and set yourself apart from other bands as well, and try to find your audience. So
I feel like the live show is where people get set apart though. Don't you? Because it's like if you can't play live, you know what I mean? And I mean, like, I mean, like, and I mean that in the sense of like you guys can actually like play and put on a show and sound good.
well, I don't know about the sound good part, but like in general, it's hard because a lot of darkwave music, and this is kind of like one of my gripes about it as a genre, is God, I'm gonna go on a rant now, but like, so back in the '80s, like you had to have like the equipment to do it. So like you had to have the synthesizers, you had to have like the sequencers, and you had to like have the time to actually figure out the learning curve with that. You couldn't go watch a YouTube video. But now like there's VSTs and plugins to emulate every classic synth out there, which makes it so much more accessible. And I love that about that. But the problem is now a lot of bands don't, everything's done in the box, so to speak. Like all the programming is done, and you go to play a show live, and you're just playing music out of your laptop. There's so much of like the dark wave like live performance these days for a lot of artists is for lack of a better term, just it's karaoke. Like you're playing 100% on backing tracks and doing the vocals, and like that's kind of how it has to be for a lot of people. But like I would love to see bands like get guest musicians to come and play some of the parts live. um you
Instead
know
of like
it
backing tracks and stuff.
Yeah, and like you can't avoid backing tracks. Like they absolutely have a place, but it shouldn't be the majority of the sound that's coming through is from the PA system. Like you need like you just need instruments, even if they're just synthesizers. You need something to play. Otherwise, I'm just watching somebody on stage.
It is more interesting too, like when you see a full band, I think.
Well, and we go back and forth on this too as a band because um, we just because we've moved around and like everything like that. In the classic issue is being able to find a solid, reliable drummer, and a lot of what we have for the drum parts are very difficult things to play. They're like 16th notes on hi hats at 160 BPM. Like that will wear anybody out, and so we've always like played around with like, well, should we play with like backing drum tracks because a lot of bands do that. Like I mentioned House of Harm earlier, like all their drums are programmed and it sounds great and they don't lose anything from that in their live performance. But I do think having live drums adds a different kind of energy to a show. So we've gone back and forth. I think we're going to give it a shot to play some with backing tracks because I think there's pros and cons to it. But obviously we're still like playing live synth, live guitar, live bass and everything. So I don't know. It's hard out there. More people need to learn how to play drums.
Well, people don't think about it, but it is a cornerstone of like any actual band because they set the pace, you know? So if the drummer's off, yeah, if the drummer's off, everybody else is off too.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing. It can fluctuate. Like there's more energy when you can speed up the tempo and everything like that. Whereas a lot of things when just played 100% through backing tracks, it's you might as well just listen to the recording at home or go to a DJ night. Like it's the same kind of thing. So it's hard.
Well, I mean, anything creative is an endeavor, right?
And there's no right way to do anything. So who am I to say, don't listen to me?
Well, Travis, thank you for being on the show with me today. It's been great to have you on. Anything else that you would want listeners to know? They can find you on all the streaming platforms, on Instagram. Anything else that you'd like them to know?
Playing in New York on what is it, the 15th of February. That'll be a great show. We're doing actually like a little run with Demers in support of the release of the 7-inch. So I think we're playing like in New Jersey on the 14th of February, New York on the 15th, and then DC on the 16th. Really like the 7-inch that's about to come out, so just give that a listen. It's one of my favorite songs that we've done, and the Demers track is great.
Yeah, they're
And
both really good, I have to say.
thank you. Thank you. So that'll be out. Just listen. I always appreciate it when anybody listens. I never expected anybody to actually listen to anything, and so it's always a nice surprise when people do.
Definitely. Well, you're putting art out for people to hear it. I know it's hard to admit that, but like nobody wants to put it out and then it just no one listens to it, you know? So
There's a lot of people that happens to. It's happened to me. Still
well, it
happens to
happens
me
to everybody,
sometimes.
you know?
Yeah.
That's the thing with creative endeavors. So, but anyway, thank you, Travis, again. It's been great to have you on, and everyone give The True Faith a listen.